On a recent show, you went further saying, here's a leader who's mocking the gods of his ancestors, mocking the God of gods, and exalting himself above them. Could this be the Antichrist?
I actually did not say, could this be the Antichrist?
Could this be the Antichrist?
Those words did, in fact, leave his lips. It's not a quote that he said 2 years ago. It's a quote he said less than a month ago. Conservative media star Tucker Carlson is making headlines and making waves after getting caught for kind of a blatant lie, or at least a pretty significant error, you might say, during an interview with the New York Times. So basically the setting, the context here is the New York Times flew out to Maine with their video crew and their interviewer to do an almost 2-hour sit down with Tucker Carlson and talk about him kind of breaking up with MAGA, turning against President Trump, mostly related to the Iran war, but also other things. And I watched the full thing because when something like this is going viral and there's a little snippet, I like to take the time rather than hop on the bandwagon and react to the same 30 to 60 seconds that everybody else is discussing, which often lacks important context. I like to take the time to try to watch the full thing. So I watched the full interview. I did watch it on double speed, but that's because my ADHD brain needs to watch everything at least somewhat sped up now. And unfortunately for Tucker, he got caught in a pretty blatant lie, or if it's not a lie, then he's got some kind of cognitive function issue or something strange happening, because this interviewer asked him pretty directly about some very controversial statements he'd made, directly comparing Donald Trump to the Antichrist. And Tucker, I'm not a religious person personally, so I wouldn't really speak in those terms, but Tucker is Christian, and he talks about his faith and about caring about these things. And so the Christians in my audience will have to let me know, but it seems to me like that's not the kind of thing you say or invoke lightly. Yet after Trump kind of infamously tweeted that image depicting himself as Jesus, Tucker did a long video criticizing Trump over that post. And I agreed with some of the points that he made, but he did quite directly compare President Trump to the Antichrist. Now, this New York Times journalist asks him about that, and Tucker looks her in the eyes and flat out says that he never said it. Adamant, completely certain, sure as sure can be. I never said that. It's a remarkable thing. And then what they did is in post-production, they went back and spliced the clip of him saying it into the middle of this exchange. Let's watch here from the New York Times podcast.
You know, we're all capable of evil. So I want to pull back on the judgment and be very precise about what I was saying, which is you cannot mock other people's gods and put yourself in their place, period. That is
I'll just pause and say I disagree with that. I think everyone should have the right to practice their own religion and hold their own beliefs, and that right should never be infringed upon in terms of restrictions or censorship or bans. But we absolutely should be free to mock other people's religion or to criticize it. It's ultimately a belief system, just like any set of values or practices or beliefs or opinions. It should not be above humor or reproach or critique. Now, I can accept that a president should not be casually denigrating, a faith of millions of Americans in the way that Trump did, that he's talking about in this context maybe, but I don't agree with this statement that just generally all religion should be respected. That's definitely not true. In fact, religion has been used, perhaps wrongly, to justify atrocities in the past, and I'm glad people did critique and mock and question it. Now, this is kind of an aside, but I did just want to make that point about what Tucker's saying here. Anyway, I'll keep it going.
period. That is a deal killer for me. That's worse than the war with Iran, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I ask because...
Okay. This is the kind of that Tucker says that's actually kind of crazy, but floats by unnoticed sometimes. He really just said that Trump mocking Jesus is worse than the war in Iran, which Tucker has blamed for the deaths of dozens of Americans, which Americans, whether you support the war or not, have died in the conflict, and has said threatens to cause World War III, threatens nuclear war, all this stuff. And you're saying, as much as I found it to be totally a terrible thing to post and really agree he shouldn't have done it, to claim Trump posting the image of himself as Jesus is worse than that seems wild to me from his perspective. But he just kind of says that and it just keeps it moving. He's a very fascinating figure. He's very charismatic, and he has this way of making everything that he's saying sound as if it is common sense and what everyone thinks, even though in many cases it is very much not. But he has this very good, I don't like his chuckle that he does. His that I don't enjoy personally. But other than that, I do find him to be very compelling. It's not a surprise to me that he is as popular and has had as successful a career as he has, especially given his flexibility intellectually and ideologically. Could Tucker Carlson actually run for president? According to the latest prediction markets from our channel partners at Kalshi, people think there's a 7.5% chance he could end up as the Republican Party's 2028 presidential nominee. I'm pretty skeptical and very much not a fan of Tucker, but in the Trump era, you really never can say never. Anyway, Kalshi is the first CFTC, a regulated exchange dedicated to trading on the outcome of future events. If you want to check out Kalshi today, use my link or code BRADP to get $20 free when you place a $20 prediction.
Because, you've been talking on your show about whether Trump is the Antichrist.
I have not said that.
On your show, the day after Easter, you noted he did not put his hand on the Bible during his swearing-in ceremony as president. You said, and I'm quoting, maybe he didn't put his hand on the Bible because he affirmatively rejects what's inside that book. And then on a recent show, you went further saying, here's a leader who's mocking the gods of his ancestors, mocking the God of gods and exalting himself above them. Could this be the Antichrist?
I actually did not say, could this be the Antichrist?
Narrator. He did, in fact, say, could this be the Antichrist? And they insert the little snippet here of him saying it, but I went back and found the full context for you so you can see how brazen this denial is. Let's keep going.
Be the Antichrist.
Here's a leader who's mocking the gods of his ancestors, mocking the God of gods, and exalting himself above them. Could this be the Antichrist? Well, who knows?
I don't know where that comes from, but I know that those words never left my lips because I'm not sure I fully understand what the Antichrist is. If there's just one, I actually tried to understand it. I may have said some are asking that. I'm not weighing in on that because I don't understand it.
Narrator. Those words did, in fact, leave his lips. And what's remarkable about that is that it's not a quote that he said a year ago. It's not a quote that he said 2 years ago. It's a quote he said less than a month ago in an impassioned monologue about this. And so a couple things one of these things has to be true. Either he is knowingly, brazenly lying and denying having said something he knows he said because he just thinks he can get away with it, in which case that would be another addition to the, at this point, quite substantial reasons I don't view him as a trustworthy figure. I've covered many of his past factual errors and misleading coverage and deceptive, two-faced kind of what he truly thinks versus what he says to the public in the past, and I do find him to be a duplicitous figure in that sense. But this would be another pretty serious addition to that, and I don't think you can brazenly lie like that and maintain your credibility as a journalist or commentator. Now, in reality, you can. I don't think you should be able to, unfortunately. In reality, when you look at the pool of who's popular and who's got the biggest audiences today, clearly it's fine and people don't mind, but I object to it. Or the alternative is that he actually doesn't remember saying this and when he says, I never said that, he believed that to be true. But while you might think that kind of lets Tucker off the hook, it really doesn't. It's actually indicting of him and damning in its own right in a kind of different way, because that means that he is then somebody invoking his Christian faith and declaring that someone could be the Antichrist, which again, Christians in the chat will have to let me know. Outsider's perspective here, I don't think that's supposed to be thrown around lightly. So then he's somebody who is saying that so lightly and off the cuff and tossing that around that he doesn't even remember he said it. And again, I think it's the former, not the latter. I think he's just lying. And I don't think he realized in the moment, at least, how easy it would be to roll back the tape that he did in fact say that. Though he probably should have, because she clearly had this on notes. And whatever you think, like a New York Times reporter, even if you think they're biased, they're going to ask gotcha questions and try to take you down. They're not going to read fake quotes to you that you never said. That's very unlikely. If they have quotes they've researched from you in the past, they're probably things you said. They might be out of context, but they probably are things that you said. Anyway, though, I was very curious about this. So I went to find the original video that he talks about this. And it's from mid-April, guys. It's literally from like not even 3 weeks ago when he posted this. And here is the context of him talking about Trump possibly being the Antichrist. And it wasn't an off-the-cuff remark. It wasn't just something he briefly said and clearly hadn't thought about. It was part of a deeply thought-through monologue and argument. Listen to this.
But for sincere religious people, for Christians who care about Jesus and what's true and what's not, a lot of them went to their Bibles to try and figure out, what are we watching here? And a lot of them came up with a couple of verses that seemed to fit what we're watching. Prophet Daniel describes something very much like this at the end of history, and he's describing this period, really, as is so often described in the prophets, as punishment. Punishment for faithlessness and sin. God's people are being punished for not following God. And that punishment, he describes in part in chapter 11 from the book of Daniel, predicts the coming of a king, and we're quoting now, a king who will do as he pleases. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god and will say unheard of things against the God of gods. He will be successful until the time of wrath is completed, for what has been determined must take place. It's all ordained, in other words, preordained. He will show no regard for the gods of his ancestors, nor will he regard any god, but will exalt himself above them all. So to a lot of Christians or people who know the Bible well and believe in it, these predictions in both the Old and the New Testament, and there are others, seem to fit what we were watching. Here's a leader who's mocking the gods of his ancestors, mocking the God of gods, and exalting himself above them. Could this be the Antichrist? Well, who knows?
So listen, he said this. And once again, he did not just say it as an off-the-cuff remark. He said it as part of a researched, thought out, I presume scripted, though he claims these monologues are all off the cuff. When I read them, they appear to me to be scripted, and he may be reading at least partially off a teleprompter. But even if it's off the cuff somewhat, clearly he's researched and thought about this. He's found passages from the Bible that talk about the Antichrist. Then he reads them out and then connects it back to Trump in his recent posts and asks, could this be the Antichrist? And yet, a few weeks later, you're sitting down with a reporter and she asks you about that, and you look her in the eyes and say, those words never left my lips. How? That's ridiculous. I would never say such a thing. Are you okay? Like, that's a level of lying and dishonesty that actually is galling. And it's audacity when tapes exist. When we were all there and we saw you say it. And it's either that or it's like a sign of some sort of mental break or slip or memory cognition issues. Either way, it's a serious cause for concern with Tucker and should be a massive red flag. Now, here is the part where she basically like confronts him on, yes, you did say this. Here is how he responds. Let's listen.
You did say, could this be the Antichrist? And then you said, well, who knows? You did use those words. So,
man, then my apologies to you if there's video of me saying that. I guess what I'm expressing to you is it doesn't reflect exactly how I feel. That suggests a precision that I haven't arrived at. Trump is the Antichrist. Well, you'd have to define, I mean, we're sort of quibbling here, but you'd have to define Antichrist, and I know that I can't define Antichrist.
So I will say this is why I like to go watch the full episodes rather than just react to the clips that people are circulating on X, because those clips often do tend to be misleading. And everybody was sharing the first clip where Tucker says, I never said that. And nobody was including the part where he ultimately says, okay, I'm sorry if there is video of me saying that. Okay, I guess. And he does not, so he kind of comes around to accepting reality and rather than brazenly just like lying. But still, it's very strange that he would not remember that. And Christians in the comments are going to have to let me know if you would ever not remember suggesting that the president could be the Antichrist. That still strains credulity to me, and it's fine, I guess, if it's to say that doesn't represent my thinking or my opinion. But then why did you say it on your like massively popular podcast that's hugely influential and tuned into by tens of millions of people, according to the numbers that his company recently put out? I would suggest humbly, as just, an irrelevant nobody over here, that maybe you should use your platform a tad more responsibly. But this was just one part of the New York Times interview with Tucker that was fascinating. Honestly, it really was quite interesting to me. But there were other parts like where he defends his total softball with Nick Fuentes by just like deflecting to, well, there's actual politicians doing bad things, and it's like, and Nick Fuentes doesn't matter, and he's just a distraction from the economy and all this stuff. It's like, you chose to interview him. Your interview with him got like 20 million views across platforms, and you did a softball. So if he doesn't matter, you shouldn't have interviewed him. And it's fine to say, I don't disagree necessarily that policymakers and politicians doing harmful things are much worse than Nick Fuentes saying terrible things. But when Tucker had those politicians and policymakers like Ted Cruz or Mike Huckabee on his show, he grilled them and held them to account. And when he had Nick Fuentes on, he barely pushed back on him at all. And he normalized and popularized this figure who is one of the most odious and vile people around. So I think that part of Tucker's argument did not hold weight. And again, I think this interview is really damaging to his credibility. I don't understand how people can look at this and not ask some serious questions about what exactly is going on with Tucker Carlson. But that's just my take. You guys will have to let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe if you aren't yet. Hit the like button, and we'll leave it there on that one. And that'll be it, guys, for this episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk again real soon.